When first thought, submit spirit before matter. Our celestial humanity arrives, awakening in the dream, an inception of our reality. So we live, we love, and then there is music. So we dance, we sing, we pray, we reflect. In the infinite in between, the now that was, faces dance in our dreams. Some familiar, some cosmic composition. In the irrelevance of this time, we realize the passion of the random action, learning the lesson that the brotherhood of man is far more important than the ego of any individual. Imagination becomes the sound of thought, traveling at speed. So we paint on the canvas of our ephemeral encounters. A masterpiece of memory that lives in the eternity of a child's.
As a retired law enforcement officer, how has that experience shaped your consciousness as it relates to the struggle of the African diaspora?
Oh, what a question. Well, being in law enforcement for 33 years and retiring, looking back on the history of the relationship between law enforcement and the African-American community in the U.S. it's been one of a learning experience. What a lot of people don't understand and they don't realize and they don't see the history that goes all the way back from slavery to present day. And during those times, the relationship between the law enforcement community and the African-American history has been one of I can say, of tumultuous relationship to really oppression during slavery and after slavery, and then the use of convict labor to mass incarceration until present day reform, police reform. And I have to give factual credit to what is taking place in America. But because if you look at the way the police treated blacks in the 60s and the 70s, and let's go back farther than that. Let's go back to the 20s and the 30s, particularly in the South, where the police were used as a tool to instill or keep in place past segregation policies and racial policies and oppressive policies. But we have made great strides in policing, and a lot of people don't understand the reform because there's been an outcry in the black community to do something about what happened in the past. And I can say Houston Police Department made some tremendous strides in terms of police reform, in terms of teaching, in terms of training, conflict management, conflict resolution, on how to really train officers on the street to deal with the black community. Because when I first started in Houston, I was just surprised at the way the police treated the black community. And we did make a difference, but it's a lot to be said on that effort, but things are changing. Things are changing for the better because we have, in Houston, I can say in Houston, which is the fourth largest city, the police department have had several Afro-American chiefs who were reformists, and they brought that ideological mindset on the police department, and they made a massive and drastic changes to bring better ties with the police and the community, and particularly in the black community. So it's a lot to be said on that effort, but that is some critical things that that are taking place.
Oh, okay. Okay. Next question. What is some advice you can give to African Americans about the thought processes of law enforcement officers and the criminal justice system?
One of the most particular things, the specific things that I can tell them is that you have to know history, and you have to know the history in terms of policing in the United States. Once you get to know the history of the role that policing has taken place in the United States, you can get a better understanding of the relationship between the police and the community. But if you don't know the history and you don't know the reform efforts that's really drastically taking place, then a lot of times you would remain in the mode of, I hate the police, the hell with the police. But you have to understand, the black community needs the police better than the white community. And that is the truth. And how policing relate to the social, economic, and political implications of what's taking place in society today. You have to know the history. And then once you learn the history and you take it there and you see the reform efforts, because what's portrayed out there is not reform efforts to take place. And I can tell you one thing in particular. It's transparency among that is taking place. And it's a slow process because a lot of the small police departments are not taking the national lead like the large departments in terms of reform and transparency. That's why you see a lot of the incidents where blacks are being shot by the police and killed by the police. A lot of those have to do with police departments who haven't taken on that role of drastic reform. And I always go back to Houston because the training that was required each year had a lot to do with reform efforts, conflict management, had to do with conflict resolution, and high profile energy situations.
On another subject, you've been around for a minute, and you've been quite successful with a few things. What are some key investment tips for the individual and families as it relates to marriage, money, education, and careers?
That's a great question, and I would say this. In terms of education, that education is almost a key to a foundation of a better career, because you can use education, not just going to college and getting a degree, but nowadays, since a lot of baby boomers are retiring, particularly in the fields of the market fields of the other types of jobs, like maybe a bricklayer, maybe a carpenter, maybe an electrician. In those fields, a lot of baby boomers are retiring, and they need a lot of people to take advantage of those jobs and fill those positions. So it's not always the education of going to get a college degree, a liberal arts degree, or being a lawyer or a doctor, but it's a quite task of
skilled trade.
Those field training jobs those trade jobs. That's the key I'm looking for. The trade jobs that's becoming available now, because every time I talk to some of the guys that come out here and do work on the house or something like that, cable electricians or plumbers or whoever, they say, man, do you know anybody who wants to do an apprentice job to work in those fields? So I would tell the nieces and nephews, those are the positions that pay really good pay and bit if you decide to take advantage of some type of education to take those jobs.
Mm. Okay.
And as far as economics and investment, the key thing in investments, in which I have done and which I found, you have to develop a system of saving, investing money, and I know it's real difficult, particularly with these kind of times, but you have to develop an attitude early on that Mama taught us. And she said, I used to ask, Mom, why are you sending me all the way to Highland Park to put $5 in the bank? And it was so important, because I didn't understand. I said, well, I'm going way out here to Highland Park, put $5 in your bank. And then she would always say, boy, $5 this week turned into $10 next week, and $15 thereafter, and $20 for that month. So, a lot of people don't develop an attitude of saving money and being very conspicuous with their spending. I mean, it's like nowadays it's more spending on wants than needs, and you can get real caught up with spending wants for wants and not your needs.
As far as what are some key investment tips for individual and families as it relates to marriage and family?
I would say key investments is, if you could, first of all, look into real estate. Look into maybe buying you a small house and being able to rent it out, to have you some residual income coming in, if you can. Number two, look at, particularly, you have to look at your future in terms of where you working and if they offer pension benefits. A lot of youngsters nowadays, they don't think of the future until the future gets there, until they face the future. And on their job, 401k plans, very important, because before you know it, you'll be put in 20, 25, 30 years, and if you don't have a pension plan in which can supplement your income, you end up working till you're about 80 years old. So investments in terms of developing pension plans, 401k plans, always put it away. Don't touch it. It's easy to touch because a lot of investment firms allow you to take loans out on your 401k plan, and then you end up having to pay that back, and then you have nothing for in the future. So I say that is probably the most important key, is pension, developing, put money away in your 401k plan. A lot of companies have profit sharing, and if you can get involved in something like that, you have to do it, because it makes a whole difference when you retire.
Okay. We're going to take a Tina Turner moment here, and I'm going to ask you this. What does love got to do with it all?
Man, love has a lot to do with life. And I have to start with the love that I have for Christ. That's first and foremost. Without love, understanding what love is, and understanding what love is through the prism of what God said it is and how He defined it is through Jesus Christ, I don't see how you really can love a person without that understanding. And then once you put Christ first and you love Christ first, Christ teaches you how to love the other individual, because you may think that you love an individual, and you might do a lot of things and you might have a happy time, but that's only temporarily, because it's the difference between love, joy, and happiness. God brings love, and He brings the joy in your life, which is supplemented by happiness. So through Christ's love for us and how He teaches us how to love, because love has a lot to do with compromise. It's not just love and happy and being happy with each other and doing things for each other. Love is also those times in which you have to compromise, which you have to give yourself up. A lot of things that you don't want to give up for the love of somebody. It might be for saving somebody's life, or what would you do if your mate got sick? Would you still love her, and you got to take care of her, and you got to do this? Your kids get sick, and all of these things. That's where love comes in. That's part of love too. So love is compromise and being happiness filled with joy from Christ. But Christ teaches us how to love.
How important is politics and political officials to the family global dynamic?
What a question! Good question. It's very important. It's huge, because you have to understand how the political landscape and the political implications affect your life on a daily basis. No, for one reason, you pay your taxes, and you want to know how your money is being spent, who's representing your money, and what are they doing in Washington with your money. That's number one. And number two is how politics affect your daily life in terms of your social economic situation, in terms of your you could say in terms of your housing, in terms of your education, in terms of, it's so many things how politics affect, and how people making critical decisions that affect your life every day. How your taxes is being spent in terms of where you live. If you can, particularly, let's take affirmative action for a minute. Say your kid finishes high school, and you want him to have a chance of going, an opportunity going to a prestigious school, and that school uses affirmative action as something that will allow your kids to have an advantage because of past racism. So that's important. And if your kid can get a scholarship based on affirmative action, because Clarence Thomas, you look at all the rest of them, they went to those prestigious schools on affirmative action programs. And those programs is vital in terms of politics to keep those kind of programs into the forum. I was an affirmative action baby on the police department in terms of my promotion. Even though I scored very well on my sergeant's exam, at the time there was some low corruption going on, but we had filed a federal lawsuit and we won in federal court. The union appealed it all the way to the appeals court, but we won, and that really gave me the opportunity to get promoted as a sergeant on the police department. So in terms of politics, it affects every aspect of your life in which you think you don't. It don't. A lot of people say, I don't care what them people doing, and they have that nonchalant, complacent attitude. But you have to be very aware of what politics, how it impacts your daily life, and it impacts your daily life in so many ways, in thousands of ways.
I've come to learn that you're a jazz connoisseur of urban contemporary and other. How vital is music to the well-being of the minds of the masses?
For the Afro-American, for the African-American, and I can speak particularly in regards to the African-American, because music was a medium all the way from the drum playing in Africa to those slave ships, from the slave ships to the transatlantic trade, to the shores of the Caribbean to the United States. Music has always been a vital force in which it galvanized us, and it kept us together as a race of people. All the way from, and if you look at music in terms of the inception of how it started, you can see where jazz. Let's go back. Even the blues. The blues talks about how we were in such a depressed situation, and it tells a story of how we dealt with those situations during slavery, and it gave us inspiration how to deal with slavery as slavery was. And then you look at jazz, and coming from jazz on up. If you look at all the stages of music and how it played a role in the Afro-American life, it's something a lot to be said about. And so jazz, to me, is the best medium in which it really kind of soothes it kind of soothes the soul, and it allows your thinking. It allows a lot of time your thinking to be clear.
That's what's up. Well, thank you very much, and I'll be letting you know when we publish this.
You're welcome, Brother Adriel.
All right.
I appreciate that, man.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, Adriel.
All right.
All right. I'll holler at you, brother.
Okay.
All right.